I'm Marc Tomcza. All right, good work. A little background on me. So I work for Electric Cloud currently as a global DevOps solutions architect. My background is preliminary in microservices, so I've been there since day one for the past 5 years. Been there since, Docker was just Docker, and now it's Docker, Kubernetes, OpenShift, Mesos, and the list goes on and on and on. Currently, I help enable both customers and prospects achieve some pretty cool stuff using the platform Electric Flow. And that's a little bit about me. I'm going to move on to Marc Hornbeek.
So we've got two Marcs here. If you have any questions that are hard, it's the other Marc. So I'm Marc Hornbeek, and I work for a firm called Trace3. We're a value-added reseller and consulting firm, and one of our consulting practices is DevOps. Other than that, I've been involved in the DevOps game for a while. Basically, in the old days of the telephone switching systems, we were even using some forms of DevOps with daily builds and continuous testing and delivery, but not deployment though. And certainly it wasn't elastic infrastructure, so it was our own infrastructure, but some of the ideas were the same. Since then, been involved in a lot of different DevOps transformation projects. I think it's listed over 40, but, and believe me, not all of them were successful. In fact, I'd say the great majority of them hit stumbling blocks, but some of them got to at least the first way of, what Team Kim's called the first way of continuous flow. And it wasn't easy, and not even easy to keep it there once you get there. Other than that, I'm an IEEE engineer for the past 41 years, and actually was awarded Engineer of the Year last year, which was a shock to me for work in automation over my career. So today I'm here happy to work together with Electric Cloud on this talk, and we're partners with Electric Cloud and some other vendors in the DevOps space. And I also write courses for the DevOps Institute and blog on devops.com. So that's a little bit about me. What we're going to talk, where's the advanced button, this one? Okay, so since we're both Marcs, I'm really not sure who's the Jekyll and who's the Hyde, but the idea is that we're going to just, given a very short period of time, talk about a few examples of typical, what's the happy path that everybody says works for microservices, and then inject in some of the, realities associated with that. We're not going to argue with each other, I hope. That might happen, but rather it's just to, kind of use this approach to, help share some ideas, and hopefully you'll learn a couple of things from this talk that you didn't know before. You want to go next?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, so I'll start. Basically, the idea of converting your legacy applications into microservices. All right, so basically, I'm going to give you the why and the how. So first off, you want to actually be able to decouple everything in order to make everything super simple. Because, think Inception, right? You have different layers of dreams, if it were. It's really easy to wake up from one layered dream. It didn't wind up so well for Leonardo DiCaprio when he had to wind up, waking up from 3. So when everything is decoupled, it's really easy to go work with teams instead of having to go and dive deep into different types of applications where one is tied here, another one's tied somewhere else. It's really, really bad setup because of the way people have to work around this. You become more efficient once you're decoupled, right? So you're completely agnostic, you're encapsulated. And the way you get there is by basically going and mapping your software to specific business domains. You're refactoring spaghetti code, essentially, by encapsulating current state and moving forward with the new stuff. When you start moving forward with the new stuff, you can go back and start refactoring over and over and over again, because now you're starting to realize the power behind microservices. A lot of people try to go and steer a huge ship, which is great, but at the same time, you have to get small wins. So once you actually start at a certain point in time, commit to that point, and then look back at what you can take and actually develop. Application dependencies. So on the application dependency side, this is super important because, like I was saying, if you're dependent on certain applications that you don't know it until it's in production, that doesn't wind up well for whatever the release team responsible for it. So what you want to do is actually look at your points of reference, your transactions, your data. Data is king in terms of microservices. And basically determine your workflows and your end state. End state is extremely important. Like I said, you have to take a point in time, commit to it, and then move forward. You have to encapsulate current state, make sure you're basically making money on your current technologies, because no one wants to go back, break what their bread and butter is, and having to fix that is a nightmare if you have all your dependencies messed up. With microservices, start here and look forward, and then once you have time, go back and start refactoring, because you start realizing that I can do A, B, C, when before I couldn't because I was really new to the technologies. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, and follow the data. Like I said, data is king. So look at your transactions, your architectures. You have to know what you're doing in terms of where your data is being stored. Are you tied to a specific database? I mean, I've seen tons of examples where people go through and they don't actually look at that until they actually finish developing the microservices, and it becomes a nightmare because, I mean, long story short, you're creating a huge Frankenstein monster because of all those dependencies. So, next slide.
Talking about Frankenstein monsters. Yeah, so basically we use kind of a Halloween theme since it's pretty much close to Halloween. It's also the last afternoon of the conference, so we thought we'd make at least some fun images for you guys. So if you don't know the application well enough, don't enter into sharding off microservices from your big legacy app, because you're going to have some problems. And you really need to know what the app is. And so oftentimes that's kind of where microservice transitions start, is like the architects get together and try to say, all right, this is all we need to do. We know our app, and we know what the data dependencies are, and we know what depends on what, and that's enough. So let's get going. I was involved in a project like that had something like 23 million lines of original source code, and we called it spaghetti ball.
Ravioli.
Yeah. And the architects decided, all right, all we need to do is turn it into lasagna, right? I mean, just layer it, make some big, service-oriented components instead of having this big ball of spaghetti. And that didn't quite work. So then we started off, more services from those layers. I tried to get the project to be called Ravioli, but they didn't go for that. The idea was it still didn't really work very well. The reason is that all of these product architects did know their application, and they knew the product despite the size of it, which was rather remarkable by itself. They didn't really know the whole end-to-end process and scaffolding and infrastructure necessary to handle it as they started out more and more components. So really it became a nightmare, even though they had the formula for the giving birth to this new creature, the microservice version of the product. They didn't really know the whole process, so it really got messed up. And we had to kind of go back to zero after a year and a half. That was the nightmare. So the moral of the story is you can't really, if you like the best practices, don't just, even though you know your architecture, that's not enough. You really have to understand all the different disciplines of process to go around it. When we talk about, essentially, I call them 9 disciplines of Devops at this conference. There's cultural leadership, integration, design, test, monitoring, security, delivery, deployment. So,
So to Marc's, basically what we're trying to say is technology is great, but people are also an issue for microservices. The reason it exists is because you want to scale, right? You want to get faster, but you have to coordinate that across the enterprise. It gets really, really hard if you have dependencies where you don't realize, right? So in order to get to that point, you kind of have to plan everything out beforehand, make sure everyone's in accordance with what you're trying to achieve, and then go back and start planning all stuff. These are all business drivers. So if you look at how this stuff is set up, you have the Frankenstein monster on the right, and the legacy app on the left. The idea is the same in terms of I need to make money on this right here. But the Frankenstein monster is just because I need more horsepower, right? So when you're trying to decouple things, the thing is you have to make things extremely simple. Look at it from a very low level instead of a very high level when you're starting to implement this stuff. Because once you look at it from a high level, you actually realize that implementing this stuff is a lot harder than people say, right? It's great saying I can run Docker here, but in order to get there, I have to create 14 different services that used to be one service, right? So you really have to know what you're doing before you actually start taking apart certain systems and creating things that kind of can get out of control. Look at Frankenstein, right? There's no one to figure them out. Simple as that. All you need is our tool. Here's where we go. So whether it's CI, CD, and now ARA, people preach about software, and I mean rightly so. It's the way industry. You have software and people. Right? What people misunderstand is software will not solve all your issues. It's the importance of those people and those processes in those organizations that take care of the software. Right? Software enables. Culture reinforces what you're trying to substantiate. And when you do this, basically, is by enabling your teams, by presenting new software, software that works, software that best of breed, and software gets the job done. The thing about software is, like I was saying, it's made to be used by people. Ultimately, it's you pressing the trigger on that button, right? So when people don't preach about solving a solution with just software, it does not work that way. It's a two-way street. Knowledge transfer is huge. So the thing about this is, you have software, but you have to know how to use it. Knowledge can be measured, creativity cannot. So when you start implementing this stuff, you have to get really creative with it. You also have the knowledge, the background, in order to use the tool, right? So when you're trying out these tools, make sure the usability is there. Looking forward, does this stuff scale? How am I going to approach the problem this way? Am I limited? Is my solution going to be okay now? Is it going to be okay later? Do I have future-proof, solutions that basically go ahead and enable me to do really cool stuff in the future? They're going to basically go ahead and enable me to create more revenue where I need it. Let's start thinking about things like that. Because if you're getting tools just for here and now, what's going to happen when technology changes 2 years from now? 5 years ago, no one was talking about Docker. Now, that's all installed.
So fundamentally, even a killer tool in the wrong hands can be a problem. There's a lot of good tools out there, but if you don't have a proper, complete, holistic solution, including a tool chain where the tools were designed to go together, you can have the best individual tools, but in combination, it's not going to work very well. In particular, there's a lot of tools that claim to be DevOps ready, but they aren't really designed for auto scaling. They weren't really designed for the native DevOps environments that we're now calling best in class. So be aware of that. Keep an eye out for what really are the right characteristics. And with microservices in particular, you're not looking at a tool that can operate well within a tool chain. You're looking at a whole set of parallel and dynamic tool chains that are dealing with different parallel pipelines for a large number of microservices. We look at, let's say, Uber, from one big legacy out to 2,000 microservices. What tools are going to be able to scale that way up and down dynamically? So the whole tool chain is important, not just the individual tool.
Right, it's true. The thing is it can do, right? Now you have all these different tool sets, new way to visualize everything from planning, and code conception, all the way down to production, operations, and monitoring. It's not just a one-stop shop where, go in, my skeleton and Jenkins, I'm done. Well, where's the code going to go? It's creating builds. We have to deploy it, right? But with microservices, yeah, it's basically Docker run in the background. We just have to coordinate all that stuff. So just something to think about. Right. Dev teams become more holistic. And this is actually huge because I've been involved in it about 10 years or so, but when you're looking at the software development cycle, you usually have different silos, right? You have your recipes here, you have your build, you have all this good stuff. Now, because of containerization onto Docker, you almost have to be a jack of all trades, essentially. You're doing infrastructure at the same time you're doing code change, the same time you're doing actual testing. some think about when you start not just implementing, but hiring talent. Because it's really easy to say do this, and this, but when you're working across different teams in an organization, you have to have a way of coordinating all this, right? And a lot of it's knowledge. You have to be knowledgeable about who you're using, what you want to accomplish. If you don't know anything about testing in terms of, JUnit or whatnot, for my main build, how's that going to work? The same guy's responsible for, creating an application, because in the container world, everything's encapsulated, right? So you have cross-functional teams that are working together to achieve the end state. They're relying upon each other, but the problem is, what if the talent isn't in that pool? Right? It becomes an issue.
So even, again, within microservices, the idea of having small teams, but Bezos and party called pizza teams. You can have really good teams that work together, but if they're a little bit predatory, I've seen this happen where some teams get really aggressive and start grabbing resources from the organization as a whole. You really need coordination across these teams as well, even though you want some level of independence within a team and you want them to work as individual microservices teams. That's not good enough. There has to be there's a Japanese word that came out of Toyota production system called yokoten, where you share best ideas across the organization as well, like lateral, horizontal scaling, if you like, horizontal sharing. So, watch out for those great teams that seem to, get all the resources at the expense of everybody else. So that's an example of it.
And the thing is, you have to be able to fail fast and learn fast. That's key, especially microservices. If you're learning, the learning process does not stop, right? It's ongoing. So you have to be able to reinforce your culture by failing and failing fast. Success is like a driven through failure. You have to figure out one way to make a success. Edison said that, where we go in and we fail. We need that one success that can change everything. Something. And this is what people look for, right? Increase the agility, acceleration, and ultimately the quality for your software. Why do you want that? Well, I want the feature set yesterday, right? I have new stuff coming out next week. Are you done with this part? A new product launch. I have a new e-commerce website. Things change really fast. And because that microservices came about, you can't take care of that issue. And the way you achieve this is, again, by having a holistic view of what you want to achieve, getting the business and technology on the same side, and then looking at it from a very low level, actual problem set. You really want to limit your scope in terms of problem sets, because it's really easy to approach a problem, one problem, versus many, right? So it's really something to keep in mind of when you're trying to tackle microservices. Because when you go into it, it's really increasing, right? Development accelerates, quality improves, great catchphrase. But the thing is, it's because you fail fast over and over and over again. Your testing gets better because you catch things on the fly all the time, right? You go through and you say, A, B, C, D failed. Why did they fail? Well, it failed again. Pinpoint that problem and start, but on a smaller scale. Don't attack this huge, giant thing because it's never going to work out. I've seen it across the board. People are just throwing things where you have this huge bucket of problems. You look at it, and you say, okay, we're going to take these 20, fix this, and this, we're good to go. The same thing happens next week. Because no one's actually looking at the core issue on the lower level. They're not taking apart the problem. They're not approaching the problem from a very simplistic way.
Yeah, so one thing to be wary of trying to get results, DevOps results out of microservices, again, is on a micro level, you might achieve this result, but at the product level, maybe not, if you're not careful, right? Don't over-optimize in just one area. You can have the best, vehicle that runs fast, but if you don't have, all the other aspects to go with it for the whole set of microservices, you can get stalled out. You do need people and process aspects as well as the technology should all be kept in sync. I've seen a lot of cases where people get stuck on a particular tool because it's a really great tool, they've had lots of years of experience with it, and they're reluctant to get, let's say it's a test harness, right? They've used it for years. But it doesn't really suit this dynamic environment of microservices. So be willing to give up, that component that you think is really great if it makes sense across the board.
Again, it's all about the data, your transactions, your architecture. Whether using event sourcing, decomposing using web functionality, decomposing by responsibility, by business purpose. The thing is, when you approach problems, you got to look at the data. That is key. We're going to end the talk in about a minute or so. But did you guys have any questions? I know this is a super high level thing about microservices. It's a very broad topic. So this will kind of give you a taste of what we're seeing out in the marketplace and whatnot. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So have you guys heard of strangulation architecture? Let's look if you want to comment on
No.
how
Can you describe it?
it's the idea that, especially with a function coming in, and maybe you have a sense of that function happening while the system is with. Maybe you'll do all of that where you have a parallel.
Yeah.
The other thing, so strangulation.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the approach I see in the marketplace for very simple back manufacturing based on business purpose or business functionality. Does that make sense? It works in some regard, but you can only get so far with that type of architecture, right? You're going to find out that roughly everyone always still wants to guess when actually present this, but it always ends up on 20% for mistake. A couple of points for example, where once you start making native microservices in-house, you're going to start realizing you should refactor the code because you're going to realize newer ways of doing things that you didn't have before. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I was a comment. It's not just the architecture that you have to strangle, it's also the process. You have to make sure that you have a transition. Right. Yes, absolutely. Any other questions?
Thanks again.
Thank you.